Welcome back to the Ponderosa. I am Seth Varnadore, joined by Nathan Bond and Robert Steeg. We'll cut out all the pre-ping pong talk here, the pre-show ping pong talk. But if you are looking at doing some high-level table tennis wagering, check out the Bayer Examiner Discord, where we have a whole subsection dedicated, and somehow these people are just making money hand over fist. So, and everyone that's listening to this should have access to that. So, we're going to have Nathan Carroll of Bronco Nation News, I believe, on later to discuss Boise State. But first, we've got some advanced stat information and play calling information for the Boise State offense from last season. You may have seen me go over some of these for USF. Friend of the show, Bud Davis, was able to get me some other ones at request today. So thought this would be a good look at the Boise State offense before, maybe stylistically, before we get too far into the personnel side. So let's put us at the bottom here. And we'll go on the side. All right, so here we go. So this is the 2024 Boise State play calling chart here. As you can see, all plays. So for all plays through the season, a 51% success rate. Pretty good, right? I believe success rate, I could pull up the exact definition, but I believe it's gaining 4 yards on first down, gaining half of what you need on second down, and then all the yards you need on a conversion down, so third or fourth down, right? So it's an advanced, let's see. Okay, so I'm sorry. Generally, at least 50% of the yards on first down, 70% of the yards needed on second down, and 100% on third or fourth down, according to Google AI. So there you go. So 51% of their plays were successful. You can see everyone's kind of talks that this is a big-time run team with Ashton Genty, but they're actually slightly more successful passing the ball, slightly higher EPA passing the ball, obviously not including sacks and scrambles. That negative EPA is going to be for most people. Interesting stylistic things. A lot more motion. So this middle column here is kind of relative usage. On the left is usage, and then you have success rate and EPA per play is the two on the right there. So relative usage is kind of to the average for FBS. So they use motion 11% more than average, and they use 12 personnel 11% more than average as well. So another interesting thing, the Ashton Genty effect got a lot of heavy boxes last year. 56%. So that means more than 7 or more guys in the box. 56% of the time, heavy box. 21% higher than the national average. And they still had a 52% success rate against heavy boxes.
That's crazy.
Anything stand out here in this initial section? Then we'll get to kind of the more passing and rushing specific things.
56% usage in heavy box and 52% success rate is nuts. I also saw Mountain West football last year outside of Boise State, so not like totally.
I was going to say on the Pod by the Bay, they're going to win the conference again this year because the other Mountain West teams we saw this weekend were not very good.
No, UNLV kind of took to school by Idaho State for way too long. And they're supposed to be really, really good, allegedly. So I'm fascinated by the 12 personnel. Like I love it. It's so like anti-college football over the last like 10 years. It's always like 11 personnel, 10 personnel.
It's starting to. So that's where I think that's the next cycle. That's the next part of the cycle. Is we're cycling back to bigger bodies.
Yeah. We talked
Texas,
about that last week, I think.
Georgia, Florida. You're seeing a bunch of teams start to move more towards this. You'll see even Ohio State with all their skill guys, they'll still getting 12 a decent bit.
Yeah.
Just because the linebackers are so much smaller and faster now because everyone's gotten faster that now it's like, all right, we're going to get bigger.
Yeah,
and on small linebackers. So,
and like the 10 personnel being almost non-existent is maybe just as fascinating as the 12 personnel. Like, how often do you see just 4 wide with a running back just to spread them out, go from there? So to see that at like less than 1%, obviously you're kind of skewed with like the talent that you have. So you definitely want some extra blockers in for Genty, but I would reckon it's probably going to be similar. Maybe I don't think you'll see a 56% heavy box ratio this year. I think they're gonna shy away from that a little bit. I think that's a little. I think you're not going to see that too much this year. But
yeah, it'll be interesting because like some of it is like, all right, if you put 2 tight ends on the field a lot, all right, we gotta bring in a heavier box here. So some of it's Genty, but some of it's also like, all right, you're gonna play in this much double tight stuff. We've got, and you're committed to running the football. We've got to kind of, and you can see at the top there, kind of really a 50-50 run pass split, because those 5% sacks and scrambles are probably called passes. So kind of a 50-50 run pass split, really good running back. Teams definitely loaded up the box, and you can see where else that pays off. What's fun, interesting, RPO, very low, very little RPO, but above average play action. So that's where they kind of use the run action there. And you can see play action was really effective for them in the passing game. 55% success rate, over a quarter point every time they attempted a play action pass. And I think the other interesting spots here in this passing are, look at the slot targets and the tight end targets, right? Tight end targets more than average. I think you talked in Pod by the Bay about the returning tight end they have that was really good. I think one of their slots may be back, but their potentially best receiver is going to be a wide target guy. So that'll be interesting to see how these numbers change this year. They got a guy, I believe it's Chris Marshall, I believe is his name. Was a 5-star recruit in that one like really famous Texas A&M class a few years ago. Kind of washed out, went to JUCO, came back, didn't play much last year. I think he was hurt a little bit, but hasn't had any like disciplinary issues. There's been like a really, model citizen, and all the Boise State guys, I think we'll get from Nathan Carroll. They think he's going to explode this year. So these numbers could change with a guy like that coming in, but I do think this is, if you're going to play double tight, well, you should be pretty good at throwing the ball to the tight ends. And then you see the running back also had a ton of success catching the ball to the backfield. So saw a ton of other things you're going to get if you're in 12 personnel is you're not going to get a lot of 2 high coverages. So when you're in this heavy boxes, you're going to get middle of the field closed. You're going to get 1 high safety, which is more man, more cover 3, maybe some like Ripley's match stuff, but you're going to get 1 high safety a lot, right? Because they're going to have to fill numbers for the box, and they were pretty good against that 1 high stuff. So there's not much here. I thought they'd be better at screen. There must have been something catastrophic on one of these screen plays, like a pick 6 or something, because to have that much negative EPA and not a huge number is interesting. So anything else stand out to you guys in the passing game here?
I mean,
it's interesting, like that 56% heavy box, but rarely blitzed against. They're just like stacking bodies, hoping for the best. I think that's an interesting kind of disposition.
Slightly blitz. It looks like slightly blitz more, but just not a ton. Not a ton of like a man on an average amount. So yeah, you might think, all right, you're going to load the box and play man. Kind of an average amount of man. So
with the yards after contact that Genty had last season, it was no wonder that everyone was just trying to play like gang tackle him as much as possible. And I think blitzing probably didn't necessarily like allude to helping in those situations.
Yeah. Right. So in the running game, it was basically, I'm assuming these are like probably the quarterback design run is very low. I'm assuming that's like quarterback sneak and maybe an occasional run. Nothing, not a ton of it though. But why I'm thinking quarterback sneaks is that's probably successful high EPA per play. So converting first downs, maybe scoring touchdowns, things like that possibly. Really just converting short yardage stuff. 97% of their runs are design quarterback runs. So I don't think now maybe he is, but I don't think they're going to be using. Hello, Colin. I don't think they're going to be using Madsen as a real big run threat. Most of the run game is zone blocking, a little bit of gap, but about an average amount. So less the gap than I think USF uses. So they're not pulling the guys too much. They're doing a little bit, and most of it was outside run, which was a little bit more than average. So and they were pretty good at that. And that could be Genty, but that could also be like they might be a wide zone team, and so that's where it hits a lot of times. So anything on the run game stick out to you guys? All right, so what do we want to see next?
It's a crapshoot, right? Like they're going to be so different in the run game without Genty, but I think
that's the biggest question.
To it.
Like, how much does it change without him? Because if it's pretty similar in terms of style, well, then all right, you're just going to have somebody that's maybe not as good at it doing it, but the offense is pretty effective no matter what they're doing. So here we'll take a look at on early down. So this is first and second down, how it changes. Oh, let's not get that far here. All right, so looks like here a little bit more likely to run on early downs. Still very high motion usage, still very low RPO usage. But one thing that you can see really ticks up is look at the play action percentage usage here. So they're going to run more on first down. And then after they run a few times, when they do pass, it's going to be almost half the time it's going to be a play action pass, right? So really use the run action as a big part of these first downs here. 12 personnel usage is still pretty high, but I think it's pretty close to kind of the previous. Yeah, it was 59-31 overall, so it's 59-36, so up a little bit in 12 personnel usage, but probably just about zero or very little 10 personnel usage. Tight end targets, again, pretty high, so even higher. So it's really probably quick throws out of the play action. So tight end targets are 16% overall, 20% here in this situation. So the wide targets are a lot less. So these are, to me, right, play action, getting people to bite up, throwing it over their head, and kind of those intermediate middle of the field areas is what it seems like, right? And then taking deep shots as well on first down. So a little bit above average, taking those deep targets, and then it's a pretty good EPA on those. So success rate not super high, but 43% is not terrible. And then, but 0.3 EPA per play, so almost a third of a point every time they take a deep shot added. So, and the heavy boxes are pretty consistent. Like early downs, they're getting heavy boxes without blitz, and they're really good against most of it, right? So
yeah, and so Madsen is technically their leading returning rusher with 296 yards. He accounted for 5 touchdowns on the ground. They do have Sire Gaines and Dylan Riley coming back as well. Gaines only played 3 games, so pretty limited sample size, but he did get 20 touches in those 3 games and averaged 7.8 yards a carry. And then Riley had 22 carries and averaged 6.1 yards a carry, and he played in the 11 games last season. So, like, there's still talent there. It's not Ashton Genty like talent, but they're still like you gotta be able to stop the run against this team. I mean, you're looking at the early down stuff, play action. You like if you stop the run, the play action doesn't work really. So I think the Bulls will probably still be focused on that part of things. But it honestly comes down to tackling at this point and being gap sound.
And they were and to their credit, they were pretty good last year against the run, right? USF was the top 20 team against the run. There was another, I'm trying to get his name because they I believe they had another running back that transferred possibly the year before, I think from Fresno State, if I'm remembering correctly, that they thought was going to be a pretty good player for him. I think got injured. I want to double check on that. But so they may have another back that's kind of maybe ready to go that we're not really thinking of just yet. So hopefully we can get that information from Nathan Carroll when we talk to him. But
let's see what else. Hey guys, I just want to say 2 things before I want to jump on a flight. One, Seth, I wanted to hear what you thought about Boise's secondary, because those of us in the wagering community have thought that they were a bit available, and that could be a chance for USF to take advantage down that way. And then secondly, I'm here to remind everybody that 1 week from today, your volleyball team opens at home against the Florida Gator. So everybody get ready for that game. It's 1 week from today. I am efforting to get our head coach on the podcast, Jolene, at some point this week, but unfortunately I'm in travel and the times haven't lined up yet, but that is the only reason I'm here. But Seth, I want to hear what you think about the ability to attack secondary. I know we're on the other side of the ball right now, but that is, I mean, if USF's going to win, they're going to need to take shots downfield and beat people downfield.
Yeah, I haven't seen a ton. I know they got some transfers in, but their passing, their numbers were pretty bad last year. We'll see how they're able to shore it up. Now they're probably going to be a little bit worse up front this year, but they seem like they're gettable on the back end. I think they got a couple transfers in from different spots. I think they got a kid from Notre Dame to come in and play. And then a couple, I think, FCS guys, but you never know if one of those guys is going to pop or not. But they seem like that's probably their weakness on that side of the ball for sure. So USF is going to need to take some shots and create some explosives, because I'd imagine they're going to try to hold the ball a little bit on offense. I don't think they're super fast paced.
No, they're definitely good. And by the way, Sire Gaines, before he got hurt, was really good. I mean, that guy was very, very solid for them. I mean, if you watch the tape last year, he's a very, very solid player. Whether or not that translates and get him, having Genty in front of you just limits your opportunities. How sturdy he is, that's another question. But week one, you don't need sturdy. You just need somebody to go out there and carry the ball. And he can absolutely carry the ball. I think he's the only reason this game is still USF +6. Otherwise, I think, like, if you take everything else, it should be, with USF at home, should be like 3.5, 4. But with him out there, I think he's that much of a difference maker where he's worth at least a point on my board at least. So, all right, I got to get on this playing field. We'll see you Thursday. Let's get fired.
All right. And the other running back was Malik Sherrod. He was the transfer from Fresno State. He played, so he was injured last year. He played in 4 games last year, and then he got injured. But the prior year, he played 12 games, started 9, had 1,400 all-purpose yards, 966 rushing, 260 receiving, and 236 on kick returns. So he is a preseason All-Mountain West second team this year. So he's another guy that's probably going to make an impact for him. And I'd imagine, right, those two shows they're probably going to keep that emphasis on running the football, right? So,
yeah,
like you said,
Sire Gaines had just a wonderful quote about his comeback from his injury. He was asked kind of what he's learned in his experience, kind of coming back from a season-ending injury last year. He said, "I learned that I'm a dog, that any adversity given to me, I'm gonna get through it. I've learned to not only do I need to be a better football player, but God's shown me that I have to be a better man off the field. I need to be a better man of faith, and just got to do overall better aside from the football side of me. I just need to work on the outside of me." Just top tier stuff. I've learned that I'm a dog.
Pretty good.
I mean, that's wonderful.
That's almost as good as Dylan Raiola said he can't get mad at God for making him look like Patrick Mahomes, for making Patrick Mahomes look like him. It's almost on that level. So here's third down and short. So you'd imagine you talked about this a little bit. I think you talked about this on Pod by the Bay. Their third down success, right? Did we talk about this, or was that off pod?
That was off pod. I wanted to save it for the Ponderosa.
Well, look at the third. So third and short, 77% success rate. Pretty good around the old football. Motion goes up even more. So even more motion. Interesting 12 personnel goes down a little bit. The old 71% heavy box, which is quite a bit above average. Didn't throw it a ton, but it's interesting, didn't use a ton of play action, even though third and short, right? When they did throw it, a lot of slot targets, not a high success rate. There is some explosiveness here. So third and short maybe took some shots here. You can see Middle of the field open, 100% success rate, 2.07 expected points added. Pretty good on those plays. It's probably not a ton of them, but the run game is kind of where it's at, and you see zone blocking, 82% success rate, inside run, 78% success rate, outside run, 85% success rate. There's not really too much deception here. They're coming at you, and they're going to run it right at you for the most part. Very little use of RPO, but when they did use it, it was very effective. So, bunch of motion, but I'd expect like a bunch of motion, and this will be something we have to ask because they do have a new play caller this year. He was the run game coordinator last year, but Dirk Cutter was the play caller. So, we'll see if they keep motions and shifting and things like that in as much, but. So that's 3rd and short. Anything stick out to you here besides just the sheer amount of success?
Their 3rd and short play calling seems a lot like mine. A lot of slot targets in CFP 26. A lot of tight end targets. Super safe. Hoping for the best, but not enough screen game. Honestly, I love me a good halfback slip screen.
On 3rd and short.
It's making me feel more uncertain because I everything just skews in the back of my head that they had, like, statistically speaking, the 2nd best running back of all time.
Second best running back season of all time.
Yeah, like it feels like I can't make a decision on this team at all. Like it's like taking it's there's no way to describe what this team is going to look like without literally the guy that got, I can't even remember off the top of my head, like 4 additional yards after contact or something like that. Like every time, like do they have the firepower to keep up with that again? No, definitely not. But at the same time, it's like they still have like a pretty good running game, and they've been able to reload like consistently. Like I've been sitting here doing stats in the background, trying to, compare, season afters for like when you have like an unimaginably good running back season, and then what happens the season after when that guy leaves. And understandably so, there's a dip in production. And so I'm sitting here like looking at this and I'm looking at that. I'm like, it doesn't make me feel more confident in USF, but it makes me feel less confident that Boise State is going to be like, going back to the well at this.
Like firing on all cylinders, right?
Throw out all this. Like there's no way they're going to do like all of this again. Like all this eye candy on motion, all of this heavy box manipulation and everything like that. Like I hate preseason football for this exact reason. I can't make a decision on anything until
you don't
plays.
Trust. I think a lot of coaches feel the same. You don't really know what you have until you see yourself play somebody else. Like you can kind of like, I think we're pretty good, but there's been years where I'm like, man, we suck on offense. And it turns out, well, the defense is just really good. Right. Like it's just that happens sometimes. So here's 3rd and mediums. Some interesting trends here. Big uptick in passing on 3rd and medium. Big uptick in 11 personnel, and even a little bit more 10 personnel, like a little bit of 10 personnel, but big uptick in 11. So they go from having, previously around 30% on most downs of 12 personnel, 36, 39 on early downs, to now this is 88%, 1 back, 1 tight ends, 3 receivers, right? A lot less heavy boxes, right? Because you don't have that heavy personnel. The wide targets go way up, so they throw the ball outside more.
That caught my eye immediately. 50% wide targets, barely any slot usage, barely any tight end usage, 0 screens, or negligible screen number, because everybody loves a 3rd down screen.
Let's see. Maybe they save them for 3rd and long. We'll see in a second, but. Yeah, not a ton, very little screen, very little thrown to the back at all, which is it can be a nice outlet on 3rd and medium, especially. And then in the run game, all running back runs, all zone blocks, all inside. So are mostly inside. So probably a ton of inside zone. Looks like maybe a little outside zone, depending on how it's, charted, maybe a little duo in there. But once they get past like 3rd and 6 plus, it's basically 11 personnel passing the football. So some coaches use like 75%. It's kind of like okay, this is really statistically, actionable. So 80%. You look at the numbers, only 12% design runs. So it says 79% here, but when you add in sacks and scrambles, that number climbs even higher, right? So let's see how it changes on 3rd and long. Is there going to be a big change? I don't know. Let's take a look. Late, medium, late, long. All right, so just less run. A slight uptick in 12 personnel, but basically the same thing. 86% 11 personnel. Slot targets go way up. Wide targets go down. Screens slightly tick up, but they weren't very good at them. Run game, a lot more outside run on 3rd and long, right? So not a lot of success, but more outside run. Passing game, interesting part, right? The slot targets going way up, not super successful. Probably an uptick in terms of blitz so far from what else we've seen.
Yeah.
Right, a little bit. So might have to get the ball out quick. We did not look at the third and short. They did see a bunch of blitz, but in terms of like normal down, not super short distances, this is around more blitz than they'd seen. So again, high motion, 11 personnel throwing the football, 3rd and 5 plus, basically 3rd and 4 plus. It's going to be a lot of passing.
The number most people would be kind of like familiar with last season, Boise State 50% on 3rd downs. They were 49.5% conversion on 3rd downs last season. And then in the 4th quarter, I know there's a lot of 4th quarter talk from Alex Golish this week. That number jumps to 58.3% in the 4th quarter on 3rd downs. The kind of correlation to that is since Spencer Danielson took over in November of 23, Boise State is 70 of 79 in the red zone scoring, 55 of which have been touchdowns, which is just a shade under 70% at 69.6%, converting red zone opportunities into 6 points. That's pretty good. That's pretty efficient. And that is definitely a cause for concern moving forward for the Bulls.
So why is it so important to stop the run? Right? You mentioned stopping the run on early downs, right? Why is it so important, right? So let's just talk through real quick. You mentioned just the 3rd down success rate they've had, right? Really high. So we looked at 3rd and short, like 1 to 3 yards, 77% success rate. Very good. Medium, so that's probably like 4 to 6, 50% success rate. If you look at the success rate here on 3rd and long, so like 3rd and 7 plus, 33% success rate, right? So that's kind of the name of the game, really, and it's kind of no duh. But if you can get somebody in 3rd and long consistently, right, those are really hard to convert, even for offenses that are converting 50% of the. Why are they converting 50% of 3rd downs? Because they're in 3rd and shorts and 3rd and mediums more often than 3rd and longs, right? Because you're really good at running the ball. So that'll be a big part of it. You mentioned red zone. We have some red zone numbers as well. Let's see if there's any kind of concrete change here once they get in the red zone. Then we'll look at the gold zone, so that's even closer to the end zone. But 1st and 2nd down in the red zone, more run than pass. Still use a good bit of motion. Still mostly 11 personnel, but a little bit more 12 personnel mixed in there. Play action, 30%. Slot targets way up in the red zone there. Tight end targets, running back targets maybe a little bit up than their normal. But you see the wide targets go down, slot targets go way up. they killed blitz. Interesting, they didn't do great against man coverage, but they did pretty well against blitz. So middle field closed, man coverage. So that could be, you combine those two. That's like cover one, right? Middle field closed, man coverage. Didn't do great against that. And then mostly zone blocking down here. A little bit of gap, but not much. So less than average and more outside than inside run. But nothing too out of the ordinary for other situations here. Obviously more run than pass to get close, and pretty good success rate and pretty good EPA per play. Anything on here before we get to like 3rd and 4th down in the red zone? It seems pretty it seems to follow their normal profile, right? Some of these, once you see kind of how teams play, mostly a lot of it follows. So this is 3rd and 4th down, and this is the 20 to 11 yards out from scoring. So obviously late downs, passing goes up, but look at the motion goes to 60% of plays they're running motion. So definitely, I think probably anticipating more man coverage because you get more man coverage. So look, 60% man, 60% blitz, much higher than normal. But you see how much motion they use, 60% motion. So those
sliding
things
tight end, holy cow.
Yeah, so those go up, used in motion to kind of spring those guys loose, maybe get them free releases, play actions down. And this is across all distances. This is just 3rd and 4th downs. So 58% success rate on 3rd and 4th downs in the red zone. So that's how you count it. You alluded to those good touchdown numbers. That's how you get to those, right? So a ton of motion. So they're going to be expecting man coverage, right? So they got to have a bunch of heavy boxes and then expect you to load up the box because their 12 personnel usage goes up a little bit. Expect you to load up the box and then use motion to try to pry guys open in man coverage. No screens. All right, then let's look at the gold zone here. These will be the last two here. The gold zone is basically from the 10 and in. So probably expecting a lot of run, but 70% run, just about. Again, a lot of motion. 12 personnel pops way up, right? This is once they get inside the 10, the 12 personnel becomes their most dominant kind of personnel grouping. They're going to see a bunch of heavy boxes. Play action goes up a good bit compared to just like 3 yards before. And then the targets are a little bit more evenly distributed with a lot more targets to the running back than in previous situations, right? So get the back out of the backfield, throw it to them. In the run game, a little bit more gap than previous, so a little bit more like downhill, maybe running a little bit more power, counter down on the goal line. A good mix of inside and outside runs there. Nothing crazy out of the ordinary, but I think the interesting one is the distribution of kind of passing targets is a little bit more even here down inside the 10. And then we'll look at inside the 10 on 3rd downs, 3rd and 4th downs, and you got to have it. A little bit more passing, but still heavy run. Motion, like the highest motion percentage we've seen so far, 65%. And these can get a little screwy just because there's probably not a ton of plays over a single season that are inside this area. So, 30% are passing attempts, but then most of the targets are slot targets. The numbers get a little screwy. And there could be throwaways and things like that in here, but obviously you're going to see a lot of man coverage, a little bit of blitz, run game, zone run, a little bit of gap, and then 50-50 inside-outside run. Nothing really sticks out there. I think the important thing in this red zone, gold zone area is how much the motion shifts up and how much the 12 personnel kind of shifts up. That'll be kind of the two things to watch as you're watching the game. If they get inside the 20, expect them to put in 2 tight ends, expect them to motion a ton. Even though they motion quite a bit to the field, they'll motion even more kind of in that area. So really good offense overall. You look at the numbers, high success rate, high EPA per play. Now we've talked about it. They've got to replace a lot of guys, or at least they got to replace some important guys, but they do get some good players back. So it'll be interesting to see if they want to play the same way. I think they do. They probably built this team to play this way. But I don't know. I think that it somewhat matches up with what USF was best at last year, which was stopping the run. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's again, the drop off of replacing Ashton Jeanty is like just looming majorly in my head, where now I'm thinking like, all right, they have some stud wide receivers, you know, yeah, you have your running back as your new play caller, or your running back coach as your play caller, but like, dude probably understands that you've got some guys that can catch the ball too, you know, pretty consistently, and he's probably very familiar with how this offensive philosophy works. So I'm just overtly curious on how they feel like they're going to either have to replace Ashton Jeanty or re-identify themselves as just Boise State football at that point. Because Boise State football doesn't really never really has an offensive identity. You know, it's usually whatever kind of works for whatever coach at the time is. So what's going to be the new illustration for them? Yeah. Is it going to be a little bit more passing? Is it going to be still running back heavy? You know, no one knows yet at this point.
So I'll throw this up there. This is the stat radars from Game on Paper from last year as well. So the interesting ones here, I think, are line yards and stuff percentage, right? So it's a little bit lower than I thought it would be. Obviously, rushing EPA per play really high, rushing explosiveness pretty high. Passing explosiveness, right? We talked about that, really low, like the 30th percentile. EPA per play was pretty high because they were pretty successful at it, right? Passing success rate was super high. Didn't allow a lot of havoc. EPA per play, really high. Really good on early downs, right? Really good late down. Average distance on third down, 6.7, right? So we talked basically under 7 yards. They were 50% in the 4 to 6 yard range, 77% in the 1 to 3 yard range. That's how you get that low average third down distance. But some of it maybe was Jeanty, right? If you're seeing like the stuff percentage in the line yards, that's somewhat Jeanty. Now here's what Colin was kind of hinting at. You look at these explosiveness numbers, like this is downright USF-ian here. The passing explosiveness, second percentile. You want to be in the higher one. Passing success rate, 67th percentile, a little bit better. Yards per drop back, 6.33, 63rd. So not passing EPA per play, 38th percentile. So pretty good against the run for the most part. Not great against the pass. So it's hard to say. And here's kind of the charts of it.
I mean, Georgia Southern threw for 300-plus yards on them to open the season. Just kind of quickly going through. Shoot. San Jose State.
So it seems like they kind of a little bit of the same issues that USF's had, where the success rate's pretty good, but they're giving up a ton of explosives. So like the success rate even against the pass is pretty good, but the EPA is so high because they're giving up explosive passes and explosive rushes, right? Yeah. Anytime you see a big differential between EPA rank and success rate rank, there's probably some explosives in there when they do give up successful plays. So
I think the big example, Boise State beat Utah State last year 62-30. So on the surface, great. Spencer Petras for Utah State threw for 372 yards, averaged 9.1 yards a throw, 3 touchdowns. They had a 75-yard touchdown. They had a 26-yard reception, 37-yard reception. Like they kind of – Jalen Royals for Utah State finished 9 catches, 211 yards, and he went in the 4th round. I think he's with Kansas City now. So, I don't think there's a 4th round wide receiver on this USF roster to exploit this potential. issue, but I mean, if you throw enough bodies at it, you could probably get like a 5th rounder out of it, right? 6th rounder, maybe.
Well, you haven't been watching Josh Porter close enough. It sounds like.
Could I interest you in a 4-star tight end who is not on the depth chart instead to catch passes?
Sorry, no, we can't do that.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's you're not going to be playing the Boise team from last year, and I think that'll be good in some spots. But I think there's other spots you wouldn't mind playing the Boise team from last year. So it just depends kind of which ones of those you get. So, all right. So I think that's kind of it for the advanced stats portion of the preview. Now, check out. We're going to talk with Nathan Carroll from. Let me make sure I get the name right. Bronco Nation News. So the 24/7 site that covers Boise State, Bronco Nation News. We're going to talk with Nathan Carroll. He's going to give us a closer look at the roster and kind of the Boise State side of things. Thank you guys for subscribing. Thank you for listening to Ponderosa. Excited to start another football season. It's finally here after a long, long off season. So if you're enjoying this, tell your friends. Help us grow so we can put more money into coverage and get to more games, which we're going to try to get to a few away games this year. Make sure we provide the best possible coverage for you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
Welcome back to the Ponderosa. I'm Seth Varnadore, joined by Nathan Bond of the Bear Examiner and Nathan Carroll of Bronco Nation News, 24/7 site that covers Boise State. I got it there. Boise State Broncos. Does a really good job covering the team. Has done a tremendous job kind of going through camp. If you check out their site, if you're on 24/7, really, really good stuff. So we wanted to bring him in to talk about the Broncos, their team, maybe a little bit from last year. Obviously, some losses are probably a big story nationally, but just kind of get his take on the team. So last year's season, went about as good as could be expected. Did that kind of reach their ceiling, you think, last season?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you'd like to win the Fiesta Bowl, and that's something that the program has shown that they could do. But I mean, you go 12-1, you nearly knock off Oregon and end up making the playoff. I think that is definitely sort of hitting expectations and reaching the standards for Boise State. And obviously, too, I should just say thanks for having me on, guys. Looking forward to it, and you guys do a great job covering USF here. So excited for it.
Well, appreciate you coming on. I think probably the number one question you're going to get from most people this season is going to be, Ashton Genty's gone. What's next? How does it change? Does it materially – obviously he's a great player, but does his absence materially change how they play? Or does he just kind of maximize the style that they want to play already?
I think he definitely maximizes the style of what they want to do. Boise State, they want to be pro style, put multiple tight ends out there. They want to run the football, and they've had that identity for years, right? Obviously, Ashton was the best of the bunch, but you even go back before him. George Halani's an NFL guy. Alexander Madison's an NFL guy. Jeremy McNichols an NFL guy. Every single Boise State starting running back they've had, I think it stretches back 16 years now, has been an NFL guy. And so they're going to continue to do that. I think Ashton was just the fully realized version of what they want that running back to be. And I mean, it's not often you get a guy who can run for 2,000 yards and do what he did, right? I mean, it's a special player, but in terms of what it's going to look like, yeah, they want to run the ball. They want to be 2 tight ends. The one thing that the staff has said is a little bit different is they hope to be a little bit more 50-50 in terms of their run pass splits. I think last season it came out to like 52 or 53% runs. So maybe lean a little bit more into the passing game with Ashton gone, but for the most part, the offense is going to look the same.
Now, the offense will have a new play caller this season, right? Dirk Cutter is going up to like a senior analyst role. Nate Potter, who was, I think, the run game coordinator, so did have and was maybe a co-offensive coordinator last year, is taking over the play calling duties. How much does that change? Or is it kind of like it's kind of just keeping the next guy up kind of deal.
Yeah, he was you got it exactly right. It was the co-offensive coordinator, run game coordinator, and Dirk Cutter's still on the staff. Last season was very much a learning year for Nate Potter, right? See how, a legend like Dirk Cutter does it, and try to just soak all of that up, knowing, I think they went into the year knowing, hey, if things go well, you're going to be the man for the job. And I think they even mentioned probably halfway through the season that they had a guy pegged, which obviously ended up being Nate Potter, to be OC after Dirk Cutter stepped down. For the most part, schematically, things are going to look very similar. They're going to be very balanced between zone stuff and gap stuff. I think the biggest difference is I get the sense Nate Potter wants to be a little bit more creative and try to be a little bit more explosive, right? Under Dirk, you really didn't see any trick plays, obviously a staple of Boise State and sort of Boise State's history, but it wasn't something Dirk really tapped into. Very first play of the spring game this year, Nate Potter dials up a double pass from a fake screen to the receiver that ends up being a double pass. So I think they're going to want to be a little bit more creative in that sense. And then one thing Dirk Cutter talked about, they really didn't use much screen game last year, in large part because of the linemen that they had. I would expect a little bit more screen game and a little bit more getting the running backs involved in the pass game this year. But you're talking pretty minute stuff for the most part. The offense is going to look very similar under Nate Potter to what it looked like under Dirk Cutter.
You kind of mentioned the screen game. We kind of went into like the in-depth analytics of like the play-by-play stuff that last season showed, and it was pretty run heavy, but there were some instances, literally no screen, a lot of 2 tight end sets. What does Matt Lauder kind of bring to this offense? He's big body, I think 6'4", 245. What can he do to kind of help expand this offense with replacing a guy like Genty?
Yeah, I mean, Matt Lauder's one of the best tight ends at the G5 level, probably in that top 10 range in the country. He's got really safe hands. I think the big thing with Lauder is he's shown he's a really good after the catch threat, and that's really where this offense wants to utilize him. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think his average depth of target last year was like 5 yards, because they run so much play action boot, get him underneath and just get him in space and let him go and make plays. It's never fair to compare someone to Brock Bowers, because Brock Bowers is obviously the Ashton Genty of tight end prospects, right? Like there aren't many like him, but they use him very much in that role where want to get him out in space, let him sort of move like a receiver, even though he's got the body of a tight end. So, Matt Lauder is going to continue to be a big part of the offense, and again, that's one of those things where even with Nate Potter coming in, I think Lauder's usage will look very, very similar to what it was last year.
So one name that's been in your reports that's been kind of popping off a little bit, and you're starting to see some of the national guys pick it up a little bit, is Chris Marshall, receiver. It looks like he's probably going to be like an X receiver. Passing game was not super explosive for Boise State last year. Do you think that's a guy that can really kind of bump those numbers up? And how has Maddox Madsen done so far this camp? Do you think they're going to be willing to kind of take more shots down the field with a guy like Marshall?
Yeah, one of the key talking points from the coaching staff in the offseason was we want to get more explosive in the pass game. We want to take more deep shots. Maddox said back in the spring the number one thing he wants to work on is just his deep ball accuracy. He already threw a pretty efficient deep ball. It wasn't like he was horrible, and that's why they didn't do it. I think a lot of it came down to when you're so efficient in a run game with a guy like Ashton Genty and so explosive in the run game, right? It's pretty rare that you have a guy who can go for 70 yards on any given play. They really focused on having a more efficient kind of dink and dunk sort of passing game. So it's been a big point of emphasis. They want to be more explosive in that range. When talking about Chris Marshall, for those of you guys who don't know his backstory, former 5-star, goes to A&M, plays a little bit as a true freshman on a pretty talented A&M team, ends up getting dismissed from A&M, lands at Ole Miss, and gets dismissed in the spring at Ole Miss. So he heads to the JUCO route for a year, number one JUCO player in the country, and comes to Boise State. His issues were always off the field stuff. Last season he was here and 0 off the field issues, but he was battling some injuries all season, right? So coming into the year, the thought process was, what can you get out of Chris Marshall? And he's been the talk of fall camp. I mean, he looks like Julio Jones. He's 6'3", he's 220. He's just silky smooth athletic. He gets open. He wins contested catches. So I think what Chris Marshall provides, he's going to provide verticality because he has his speed to do that. But I think more than anything, he's going to be replacing Cam Camper as sort of that alpha X wide receiver that the offense is built around. Cam Camper, I think, had 915 yards, if I got that right off the top of my head, and really bailed out Boise State's offense on a lot of third downs, right? They wanted to find Cam Camper on third and long scenarios. I think Chris Marshall fills that role. And then in terms of trying to get verticality, Cam Bates was a guy who played a little bit as a true freshman last year. I think they're going to expand his role. He's a speedster. We don't get the 40 testing time on these guys, but if I had to guess just watching, he's probably in the 4.3s. And then there's a true freshman they bring in, Quentin Brown, who has legitimate Olympic track speed. I mean, if he just committed to running the 100 meters, he would have qualified for the Olympic trials last year. So you're talking like a 4.2 speed guy. He's looked really good in practice. I think they'll find a way to get him in the offense. So that's been the big point of emphasis with Ashton Jeanty gone. How do you get that explosiveness in the pass game? And I think between Marshall, Brown, and Bates, they've got bodies to do it. It's just a matter of whether they can step in and get it done.
You talk about bodies getting the job done. You are replacing Jeanty. You've got a couple of options in the backfield. Sire Gaines was explosive in his 3 games before his injury. Malik Sherrod is here from Fresno State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Fresno.
And then Dylan Riley. What do those 3 guys kind of bring to the table? I know Sire, I think he averaged like 7.8 yards a carry or something like that in his 20 touches last season. So definitely a explosive running back. But what can they do in this offense for the Broncos?
Yeah, I think for the most part, we'll see a lot of Sherrod and Sire early. I would expect those two to get probably 80 to 90% of the carries. Sire's kind of your do-it-all back. He's got good power, got good speed. He's got good elusiveness. The thing that I think the staff has been most impressed with him coming in as a 17-year-old last year, he got invited onto the leadership council right away as coming on as a freshman. Right, he's a leader. You talk to him, he's the most intense human I've ever met. Just straight face, handshake that breaks your hand. Like, just even as a young kid, just carries himself in a different way.
We were talking about one of his recent quotes. What was it, like? Found out that I'm just a dog or something like that. In response to his injury, what he found out from his injury time.
He's got some really good ones, man. He had one that. After Ashton got drafted, was talking with him and just kind of gave the Marshawn Lynch quote. And it was something along the lines of like, his favorite part of being a running back is just tearing down a human being, like seeing their will to tackle you break. Just very intense human. But he's got a really well-rounded game, right? He can catch the ball. He's elusive. He's got power. Malik Sherrod, a lot shiftier. Coaches have praised about his vision, which is going to be really good in the wide zone stuff that Boise State runs. Does a really good job of finding cutbacks and finding those holes. And he's a genuinely elite pass catcher. I mean, there's times where I think they might split him out and use him as a slot receiver because he really is, as a route runner and as a, in terms of his hands, really, really excellent. And then Dylan Riley is kind of your just built-in home run threat. Got really, really good speed out of the backfield. I think they want to work with him on some of those, power things. They want to get the vision up there. And, he's a young guy. He's a true sophomore. But when he gets in, they're going to be looking to try to utilize his speed and his explosive ability.
So in the run game, it looks like they mix zone and gap schemes. What is kind of their go-to? Is it a wide zone and then like a counter scheme off that? What is kind of their kind of go-to run concepts?
They're pretty multiple. They do run more outside zone than most college teams. They aren't at the level that like Iowa was at last year, which I think they were at like 45% outside zone. But Ashton was one of the few backs in the country last year who ran more outside zone than any other scheme concept. So they lean on outside zone more than anything, but you're going to get some inside zone. You're going to get trap. You're going to get some pin and pull. They do a really good job of wanting to be multiple and wanting to be versatile. So, but in general, I'd say with the two tight stuff that they run, you're going to see more outside zone than most college teams.
And then to boot off that, I'm assuming a decent bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where Maddox's one of the best in the nation in terms of off-play action. A lot of that is, set up the wide zone, boot off of it, find Matt Lauder underneath and get him into space. Or from time to time, they'll set up kind of a more traditional play action dive where they try to get vertical. Or last year, oftentimes it was finding Cam Camper off of a crossing route. So that's where, Dirk Cutter having his NFL experience, all these teams are running outside zone and this sort of Shanahan style West Coast stuff. There's definitely a lot of influence in that from what Dirk was running. And I think Potter a lot of the offense will look the same in that sense, but they do stay pretty multiple. They aren't going to be, I do just caution, they're not going to be Arthur Smith for the Pittsburgh Steelers where it's just only outside zone, right? They do a good job of keeping it multiple.
So the guys that are running that are the offensive line up front. Seems like there's a lot of guys returning, but health could be somewhat of a concern. It seems like some guys have got some dings during camp. How do you anticipate that group kind of being for game one? Are they going to be fully ready to go?
Yeah, great question. The expectation as of right now is that they'll be pretty much full go. I think there's two spots where there might be some concern, potentially left guard and center. That was some just questionable game time decision, but they've been going in practice. I think the plan is for them to play. That'll be Mason Randolph at center and Tyler Kyneth at left guard. But I think where Ashton really stood out last year and was so important for Boise State is Boise State started 9 different offensive linemen last year. Right, from center to right tackle was just a turnstile of different guys coming in and getting playing time. Which now coming into this season, you've got 9 guys with starting experience who have played, significant football. So they feel pretty good about the depth. For example, if Mason Randolph can't go, he's an all Mountain West type player, but Zach Holmes came in and played really well behind him last year. Likewise, Tyler Kyneth, if he can't go at left guard, I think the expectation is Jake Steele will step in, and that's been a camp battle anyways. There's a world where Jake Steele starts, even if Tyler Kyneth's 100%. The key piece on the O-line, though, is going to be Cage Casey. He's an NFL guy at left tackle. As long as he's healthy, I think they feel confident that they can figure out the other 4 guys.
Defensively, through the air last season was a bit of an adventure. What has Boise done to kind of at least fix that? I know the defensive line was really talented, lost some NFL guys, but the back end was kind of susceptible to the big play. What have they done to fix it? Is it scheme? Is it just getting more bodies? What have they been doing to kind of fix that leaky defense?
Yeah, I think they were dead last in the nation in terms of explosive rate given up. The defense was very much boom or bust, right? You lead the nation in sacks with 55 sacks. You're the worst in the nation in explosiveness. Part of that's just going to be schematic. They run a ton of pressures, a ton of blitz packages, especially on passing downs. And if you don't get home on those, you're leaving your guys one-on-one. A lot of their issues came when they went in cover 0, cover 1 stuff, and their safeties had to man up. They brought in Derek Ganter Jr. from Eastern Washington, who was a freshman All-American at the FCS level. I think he's going to rotate in and play quite a bit this year, and I think the hope is that he can step in and shore up some of that unit. Likewise, last year, the nickels that they had, not necessarily cover specialists, especially in man-to-man, right? More guys that can help out in the run game or even rush the passer. Shea Oladipo had 5.5 sacks as a nickel last year, which led the nation. This year it'll be Devon Banks, who played outside corner last year, and Jaden Mickey, who is a Notre Dame transfer and was playing outside corner at Notre Dame. So I think the hope is if they can shore up the nickel spot for coverage, they can run a little bit more of those man-to-man concepts, run cover 1, cover 0, and be a little bit better off. But yeah, I think coming into the year, the secondary is going to continue to be a concern because at the end of the day, 4 of those starters are back, and they're expected to start once again, and they're banking on internal development that Ty Benefield and Zion Washington do get better. The staff has tremendous praise for Ty Benefield. They believe he's an NFL guy at safety. Had some good moments last year, had some rough moments last year. You know, if he's an NFL guy, I think that you're pretty happy about where the secondary's at. If he plays like how he did last year, I think there's going to be some explosive concerns again.
How do you feel about the defensive front? So it looks like they've had some kind of transfers in, but they also lost some good pieces from that front last year. Is it going to be kind of a reloading type situation, or do you feel like they're going to take a step back there, or they can kind of keep it rolling?
Yeah, I think there will probably be a small step back, right? You lose a guy like Ahmed Hassanin, who 9.5 sacks, 12.5 the year before that. He ends up being an NFL draft pick. That's tough to replace. But this staff really likes Max Steeg. He's a guy. He's a true junior from Cologne, Germany. He's had a really strong camp, and they think that they think he's going to be an NFL guy as well at some point. So they feel pretty good about that spot. The interior defensive line was my biggest concern coming into the year. You keep Braxton Feely, who's one of the better pass rushers on the interior in the country, but you lose 3 other defensive linemen that total, I think it was 1,200 snaps last year. Boise State went out into the portal to try to fix those holes, and I think they hit on their transfers. So I think they feel really good about where the front 7 is at. Deion Washington, who played at Hawaii last year, has a ton of experience. He'll be in there. David Latu, who comes from BYU, big nose tackle, who had a really good spring camp, was a little limited to start fall camp, but he's been back full go, and they've been really happy where he's at. And then Lopez Sanusi, a guy who was a true freshman last year, who really took a leap this offseason. They feel like he's going to be able to step in and play at a high level. Spencer Danielson talked about ideally they want to be at a 6-man rotation on the interior there. If they feel like they have the guys to do it, they want to be at least 4, but ideally 5 or 6. And from what we've seen in fall camp, I think that there's at least 5 guys there that they feel good about. And that was sort of the one spot that they had to hit on in the portal, because if losing all that they lost, if you didn't, it would be, essentially 2 young guys who hadn't really played much stepping in. And, luckily for the Broncos, I think they hit there at nose tackle and defensive tackle. So probably a slight step back just because of the guys that you do lose, but there's definitely star talent still there with Braxton Feely and Jane Virgin Morgan.
Kind of want to get like a little like holistic. Like, I don't know if it kind of came across in the mid 2000s, but like it was Boise State and USF were kind of the 2 ascendant, like G5 outsider programs that were supposed to kind of break through. Clearly the Broncos have. USF has struggled. Just kind of prepping for this week, 27 straight winning seasons for Boise State through how many different coaches. What's been the crux, the key thing that has led to consistency? I mean, you fired a coach at 5-5 and ended up winning a conference title because of it in the same season. So like there's clearly there's a different level of expectation, but what was the impetus for this change and consistency through almost 3 decades at this point?
Yeah, and I think it's impossible to pin down to one particular thing, because it really does even extend back to the FCS. And Boise State used to be a junior college, and back when they were a junior college, they were winning junior college national championships with Lyle Smith. There's just something about the culture and the expectations here that at this point it's been implemented and cemented going back, like you said, decades, that if a hire does come in and is a little bit below the standard, it gets weeded out quickly, right? Like you said, Andy Avalos was 5-5 when he got let go. 5-5 for a lot of G5 programs is a good season. and for Boise State, it's enough to get you fired. And I think part of what Boise does that is a little bit unique, there is a lot of Broncos on the staff, right? So Spencer Danielson didn't play here, but before he got the head coaching job here, had spent 7 or 8 years with the Broncos. Jabril Frazier at edge played at Boise State and is obviously now a coach here. Nate Potter played at Boise State. He's from Boise, went to Timberline High School, and now is the offensive coordinator. Matt Miller, who's the wide receiver coach, played here at Boise State. So I think that there's just a unique culture about Boise State. They get guys in who buy into the culture, buy into the program, and then once their playing days are done, they find a way to get them back into the program as coaches, because once you've played in it and you've been through it, you understand it, you get it. So, that's the best answer I can give, because I really think there are so many factors. Boise State's well-resourced. That obviously helps. You've got for years they've had presidents and athletic directors who are committed to the football program. That obviously helps pretty significantly as well. But I think above all else, it's just the culture and the foundation that Boise State's built over the past, however many years.
For the team this season, what is your biggest concern? Because they obviously return a lot from a really good team. So what kind of sticks out? What concerns you with this team?
I think the two spots that I have real genuine concerns, like going into week 1, if a confidence scale is a 1 out of 5, I'm a 1, would be kicker and would be backup quarterback. Now, those aren't the sexiest positions and may not make a huge difference, so I'll talk about something else as well. But kicker and backup quarterback are major, major concerns for me. If Maddox Madsen were to go down, I think there's a pretty significant drop-off to Max Cutforth, who won the QB2 job. And then kicking is there's a long history of poor kicking in Boise State's. There's a few kicks in there. I always like to highlight Kellen Moore went 50-3, and all 3 losses were because of the kicker. Kicker's a concern going into this year as well. But in terms of where things can actually be impacted, against USF, because backup quarterback kicker probably not making the difference. I think you still have to look at the defense and the explosives, right? When you're banking on internal development, what happens if those guys don't develop? What happens if they don't take the next step? I think that's a major concern for me. And that extends a little bit even into the run defense. Boise State actually graded out fairly well in the run game last year, but they did struggle with run game explosiveness. When guys broke through the second level, a lot of times they were going all the way, right? There were a lot of games where Boise State was giving up not 20-yard runs, but 50-yard runs. And so that's where that inexperience in blue and orange on the interior defensive line, if those guys aren't able to step up game 1 and hold their own, there could be some run explosive issues as well. So I think that has to be the biggest concern. It was the one red flag this team had last year. It's what sunk them in the Penn State game in the Fiesta Bowl. And I think that has to be one of the bigger concerns going into this year as well.
Obviously for you guys, it seems to be, conference title or bust, but this being like the last year in the Mountain West, has there been like added pressure, scuttlebutt about you can't leave this conference without a title this year?
I think the expectations are above that at this point, right? If you don't win the conference championship, you're talking about pretty much a failed season, just given the talent on this team and where the rest of the Mountain West is. I don't know
after week 0,
yeah. Say, week 0 didn't look great for the Mountain West. Hawaii got a win against a pretty bad Stanford team, but UNLV didn't look good. Fresno State didn't look good. If you're not winning the Mountain West, it's a failed season. And this team's expectations are they want to go to the CFP and they want to win a CFP game this year. They want to take that next step as a program. So I think it's one of those things that they're not even, obviously winning the Mountain West title is a part of it, but the expectations are set higher than that if you end up, let's say 11-2 and win the Mountain West, that's sort of just hitting the standard. It's not where the program wants to be.
How do you feel about the move to the Pac-12?
I think it's one of those things that probably doesn't make sense to outsiders, right? Because they're like, you're joining this conference, half of it's the Mountain West. Why make the move? The big difference is you go look at San Jose State, New Mexico, Nevada, and the resources they have, and it's just well below what these new Pac-12 teams want to do. So I think on the football side of things, it probably doesn't change a whole lot. You're still going to be competing with the teams who are in the top of the Mountain West. I think every Mountain West championship winner that they've had outside of the COVID season is moving to the new Pac. So you're getting all of the best teams from the Mountain West into the Pac-12. I think the biggest difference will be on the basketball side. We don't have to spend too much time on that, but you become a pretty elite basketball conference by adding Gonzaga. But I think it's going to be a positive move. They'll probably be bringing in more TV revenue through this deal. Sounds like the estimated number is going to be somewhere in that 8 to 10 million range, which is above what you're getting from the Mountain West now. And then I think the big thing, and I'm probably talking too long now about the Pac-12 move since we got week 1 coming up, but the biggest thing is they're including a performance incentive. So based upon how you perform in the NCAA tournament, if you make the CFP, the school itself is going to be collecting a lot more revenue from that as opposed to being equally distributed. That's something that really appeals to a program like Boise State. They want to be competing at the highest level in both those revenue sports, and now they're going to be rewarded for doing so. So I think it's an exciting move. People around Boise here are excited for it. See what happens with the lawsuit and all that, but I think it is an upward move for this program.
How well positioned is Boise for the revenue sharing era that's coming up? Are they going to be trying to get as close to that cap as possible? Where are they going to be?
I think in the long term, the goal is to get towards the cap. I mean, they're not there right now. I don't know how many G5 teams are nearing that $20 million mark.
I think 10 is probably a good number for a lot of the G5 teams, it seems like.
Yeah, and I think that's where Boise State wants to be. Jeremiah Dickey, the athletic director, is one of the most ambitious people that I've ever been around, that I've ever worked with back when I did work with the athletic department here. And I think his goal would be in 20 years, they want to be at whatever the max is. It's going to take time to get there, especially, you're pretty well short of that with where Mountain West TV revenue has been, but that's where they're at. And they are going to rev share. They opted into the House settlement. They're not one of the programs that chose to opt out. So, expectations are in the long run, they want to get as close as they can to that. But right now, in terms of the rev share, I'd say they're towards the top of the G5. I've heard some rumors of figures of where certain programs are at. And, right now they're probably towards the top. And the goal is going to be to get to essentially a Power 4 level. They want to be spending what Big 12 schools are spending in the long run.
All right. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for hopping on with us and taking a deep dive with us into Boise State on and off the field. So I appreciate your time. Thanks for hopping on. It was an awesome job. You guys are killing it over there. I've just been going to check it out, and I feel like I'm really up to date on a team that I have not really paid much attention to. So appreciate your work, and thanks for hopping on with us here.
Yeah, definitely. We're really proud of the work we're doing over at BNN. This move to 247, which happened this offseason, has been great for the content. And thanks for having me on. It was a blast, and looking forward to the game.